Welcome back to My Mythical Meta. My name's Travis, and I'm joined by the entire crew. Benjamin, Derek, and Randy are here.
Hello.
My friends call me Big Dog.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
You're not my friends.
Wow.
Justin and Brandon do.
Derek records a friendship podcast with people who aren't his friends.
Yeah, that's what I'm busy all the other days of the week.
Yeah. We are in for a hopefully shorter episode than normal today. Today we're going to introduce you listeners to the world of Martian Colony that we have prepared for our upcoming session. And we're going to talk about the characters that we've come up with. We hope that we've got some characters and some storylines that are rife with intrigue and drama. And we're really looking forward to a great campaign. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. So, Benjamin, you're going to start us off by giving us an introduction to the world, an introduction to the setting, to the solar system. What did you give us as players to work with in terms of the world?
Okay, so Martian Colony has a kind of a basic world-building storyline in the rulebook, and pretty much any role-playing game will. So the core rulebook talks about, hey, it's the year 2149, and the humans have gone out into the stars and have started to colonize the moon and Mars, and they have space stations and all of that. And the Earth has become a singular government and is oppressing the colonies. You know, it's a tale as old as time. Basically, in line with most Gundam shows, especially if you're familiar with, say, Gundam Wing, that's a real core part of that storyline. I went and added a big part of that for this specific campaign. And really flesh some of that out. So humans have colonized not just the moon and Mars, but also a little bit of Venus, a little bit in the not the Kuiper Belt. What's the other one? Just
the asteroid belt.
Asteroid belt. There you go.
Yeah,
the easy one. And they've started doing all this, and that space exploration was a combined effort. There was global war, basically World War III, and a lot of the larger governments on Earth started feeling like, hey, if this goes nuclear, then we're not going to be able to respond. That'll be the end of humanity. And they started creating not earthly bunkers, but they started creating space stations, places that would not be affected by nuclear war. And so they started creating response centers and bases and all this stuff in space, so that their government wouldn't be wiped out if the war went nuclear. And once enough people had done that, then suddenly nuclear war didn't make sense, because you could just launch nukes from space and not actually take out all of your enemies, and they could retaliate. So there's no longer mutually assured destruction. And so the war didn't go nuclear, but instead the war was an opportunity for the largest political centers to kind of consolidate power. So in this world on Earth, there are only 5 great powers. There's America, which is all of North and South America except Canada, which Canada has joined the European Union. So you've got the European Union, which is all of Europe, Canada, Oceania, all the way across Asia into to the far reaches of Russia, or almost all the way over there. You have the Caliphate, which is all basically the 1040 window, North Africa, the Middle East, all the way to Pakistan and up through Turkey. And then you have Sub-Sahara, which is all of Sub-Saharan Africa, which is mostly led by a coalition of Nigeria and South Africa. The Caliphate's led mostly by Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And then you've got Indochina, which is for all of Southeast Asia. And it was formed by a treaty between India and China. So they're like obviously, this is the most populous region, and China has the most influence, but they kind of control everything else in their region. And so these are the 5 great powers. They basically took over the UN, and it's just basically one giant alliance between these 5 great powers, and they have formed the New Age, the new allied government of Earth. Even though they kind of act sort of like they're against each other, very 1984 style. We're always at war with the Caliphate. We're always at war with the European Union. But the New Age together basically keeps peace on Earth, and they're all kind of in on it. But they've all built space elevators to service their colonies and continue to reach out. And most of the warring between these powers happens in space. You know, they're looking for new minerals on Mars. They're looking for new territory on Venus, or to control the dark side of the moon, or whatever. And so all of the space colonies are governed by one of these superpowers. And what happens here is that over the course of time, right, people start developing body enhancements. There's a lot of cybernetic implants. There's nanoprobes and nanobots. There's, ocular implant. Basically, people have started to enhance themselves, as they are wont to do in sci-fi, and kind of this very cyberpunk style thing. And that can be anything from as small as a built-in arm cannon to as large as these mobile suits. So they've got these giant weapons that are basically extensions of people's bodies. And while there are some mobile suits that are basically just large armor units, tanks or whatnot, there are lots of mobile suits that are more integrated into people, and these are the ones that are going to be the most powerful weapons. And through testing, people started to realize that there are certain people with a genetic mutation that causes them to not fight the implants. Most people, when they have these implants, their body rejects it. They have to use immunosuppressants just like someone getting a transplant nowadays would. But certain people who have this genetic mutation, instead of rejecting it, they embrace it. And they are much... So it allows them to be enhanced beyond what most people could. It allows them to basically become superhuman through these cybernetic enhancements. And that allows them to be better mobile suit pilots and do a lot of other things better. But these genetic mutations seem to only be happening on Mars. There might be some sort of maybe the lack of a magnetic core means they get more radiation. Who knows? But
yeah, it could be anything.
Could be anything. We don't know, but we know that this mutation is happening on Mars. It doesn't do anything by itself, but it allows them to be enhanced in unique ways, so that if they get implants or they get nanobots or whatever, then they might be stronger, better, faster, or whatever. And so each of them has created a character in this situation. And one thing I do want to point out is that the core rulebook has it has your basic character creation. And I've given them the option of taking additional points in their character and basically making their characters superhuman.
Powered up, cybernetically enhanced people.
Yeah. And they've been told that whatever augmentations they take, whatever additional points they take, will be used as plot devices later. So, yeah, your encounters, you'll be faster, smarter, whatever the case may be, however you chose to enhance yourself, but that there may come a point where it backfires, or there may come a point where it is part of a bigger plot, or there may be something special that an enemy has, or whatever. And so there's a tension now when they're building their characters. How many of these extra points do I want to take?
Knowing that each of these extra points could be used against us later.
Yeah.
Literally in the prologue of Cyberpunk 2077, if you choose the Corpo life path, they've given you tons of cyberware, but then in the prologue, whenever they, oust you, fire you, or whatever, they just shut off all your cyberware remotely. So all of, your entire heads-up display that you've got going, all of your hormone regulators that they put in their worker, and that Arasaka puts in their workers or whatever, all of it is just shut off, and your character's like throwing up and sick, and they freeze your accounts. So and it's all done remotely because you were just part of the system.
Yeah. Doesn't Cyberpunk also have the sickness? What is it called?
Cyberpsychosis?
Yeah, cyberpsychosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of give our listeners an idea of the world I've built, it's very Gundam themed, but it's not only Gundam themed. It does have... I do draw a little bit from Dune and a little bit from Cyberpunk, and when I say Gundam themed, I mean I'm drawing from at least 4 different Gundam shows. Like I'm taking a lot of the tropes that we're all familiar with, and I'm mixing them in what I hope is an interesting way. They won't know it until they experience it, but I'm at least putting that out there, that there's a lot going on here.
Which Gundam shows would you say were your biggest inspiration?
So they're 00.
Just so that a listener could watch all 4 of them before we start playing?
Sure, yeah. So Double O, Gundam Wing, Iron Blooded Orphans, and the Universal Century ones. There's a little bit of elements from all 4 of those.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. Okay. Who wants to go first? I think Randy should go first. Randy started telling us a little bit last episode about how his character is more than just your average anime protagonist with no parents.
I was to say, well, I don't know. Last time y'all said I was just a young kid with no background and no connections. The end.
He is a young kid with no connections, but he's got a background this time.
I wouldn't know because he never shared it with us.
Aw.
Meh.
I was on his side.
Hey, you're about to hear it right now, live.
I'm gonna forget as soon as you tell me. I'm not even listening. I can go back to Travis's.
So, my character, I stole a bit of his background idea from the book about Darth Bane. So my guy is currently 20 years old. He basically had to start working in a asteroid mining company after his father racked up a ton of debt with the company itself and with loan sharks that he didn't pay off before he died. So the way it goes is okay, all this debt now goes to you. So he's been working in this asteroid mining facility since probably early, either late middle school, early high school kind of age. So he's been doing that for probably about 5 or 6 years. And let's see, father was abusive, drunk, gambler, all that kind of fun stuff. Mother was kind of fed up and basically fled. So he has no idea where she is because she wasn't able to take him whenever she left. To get out of that life, he decided, or he was basically kind of just walking down the street, and they're like, "Hey, you want to come in and get tested to see if you have a good, what do you call it,
the X gene?"
Yeah, basically doing it tested to see if you have the X gene. Basically, walked into the military recruiter's office.
Yeah,
he tested him. It was he tested well. And they're like, "Hey, we'll give you a signing bonus." And he's like, yeah, screw it. I ain't got nothing else here. So he kind of was going to use the military as a way to get out of debt with the company because he tested high. So it's well, if the company ever came for him for past debts, they would have to kind of fight the military for him.
Yeah.
It was the reasoning behind it.
I think that's a pretty cool story. Hiding from your loan sharks in the military.
Yeah.
It's
okay, the loan sharks, or said even the legit company that he works for. I said, the military is going to be no, you just wipe that file.
Yeah.
But I think we had it so they never did come for him yet. He went through basic training. Basically, he already had some training with mobile suits because he would use those whenever he was at his job doing the asteroid mining. So he already had the basics with piloting and maneuvering and things like that. And so they gave him more of the military side and combat training inside of the mechs. And with him being young, he doesn't really have any pull in terms of military pull. He maybe made a friend or so in the boot camp. Oh, and I think he did have a work crush that Benjamin can use at any point.
Yep.
That she also, I think they were a work. It was a work crush. She also went into the military. But she's still with them, and my guy has. I guess now, I don't know how much we're going to reveal, but my guy has basically been given the chance to defect, and so he's taking that opportunity to get out of Dodge. And it's cool, so I got out of the mining facility, thanks to the military. Now I'm getting out of the military because I really don't have any loyalty to them because they... this government is what allowed this company to have such tyrannical policies that they were able to basically enslave him. Mm-hmm. So he's I don't have any loyalty to this government if that's the kind of stuff that they allow. And so now he's part of, bringing down the system.
Yeah, and listener, that's one of the things I did, and since I just got Derek's, I haven't done this for him yet, but after I got their survey, I sent each one of them a message, like talking about how they ended up on the rebel side. And of course, it was always it was either using their story in the case of Travis's, which you'll hear about in a second, or it was, you know, here's a message you received. Do you join them or not? And kind of so like a mini session, one-on-one session, although it was just in writing instead of, but kind of adding like, here's how you ended up fighting together, or here's some choices you can make, and assuming you make the choice that I think you'll make, then you'll end up fighting together, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. So it's kind of a different from what Travis did in his mage game, which we talked about last time, where he says, you all work at IKEA. I knew where I wanted them to work, so I sent them a thing saying, hey, this is, you know, based on your story, it sounds like you made these kind of choices, whatever. So here's, if you're willing to make this choice, then you'll end up working together. And that's kind of where we are now. So yeah, he, like Randy said, he's been given the chance to defect. He took it, and so we'll be picking up in session 1 shortly after that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I always love hearing you guys talk about the characters you guys came up with. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Sure.
What's your character's name?
I don't have a name yet. That's
Okay.
always my last thing.
I kind of started, I don't know. I had a name for my character before anything else. And I had a picture for my character before anything else. I'm using, and I'll put this image up in the video. I'm using the image of Balalaika from the anime Black Lagoon. So
Choice.
yes. So I had this, this middle-aged but attractive blonde Russian woman with burns on her body, with burn scars on her body. And I was like, this is the character that I want to create in some way. And then the next thing I did was her name. Her name is Svetlana. And now I have to find a way to create this Russian, this older Russian woman into a mobile suit. How am I going to do that? So I made my character with some inspiration from the TV show The Americans, which is about a pair of Russian spies, a husband and wife, who live in the United States. And they are members of the KGB, and they report back things that they listen and things they hear and things that they learn about the country. And they've also been raising their children in America. And then a lot of the conflict comes when Russia starts, the KGB starts telling them, hey, don't forget that your kids are Russian, and they need to be raised with the Russian ethos. So I used that as the influence for my character Svetlana's backstory. So Svetlana was raised by the European Union in a culturally Russian community. And she and her young boyfriend, whenever they were growing up and graduating from high school or whatever, they were recruited to be spies like in The Americans. So they know languages, they know counterintelligence, and they moved together to an American satellite colony in order to do their spying. So they had a peaceful but dutiful life, and then they had a son, Leon. And due to the problems in her pregnancy, she was transferred to Mars and gave birth on Mars. So that gives her and Leon an excuse to have the X gene. After this birth, the whole family was tested because that's when the X gene was discovered. And Svetlana and her son Leon have it, but her husband does not. And so her husband feels inferior and starts feeling left out, and this creates a rift in their marriage. They return back to their old life, and they live 8 years with their son. And they've been raising him in this American colony, and for all intents and purposes, they've been raising him in this American culture. But then they're contacted again by their homeland that they need to send their son Leon home. They need to send him home to be raised, to be trained, to be educated, to be indoctrinated. And Svetlana did not want to lose her son. She felt like he was happy, she was happy, and eventually she made the choice to attempt to flee to Earth with her son on the space elevator. But she was betrayed by her husband. Her husband, who does not have the X gene, is still loyal to their homeland. And so he betrays them. There's an attack on the elevator car, and this leaves my character Svetlana scarred with these burns. And her husband has retrieved her son and taken him back into space. Svetlana survived and made it to Earth, but now she knows that she has to find her son. So she spends 2 years recovering, being lost in depression, and eventually she knows she has to go back to Earth. So she gets a communications job with a freight company, and in time she earns her own pilot's license. She rises through the company, she's given her own commission, and eventually she kind of discovers that she is a pilot savant. She can pilot ships, she can pilot mobile suits. She has a natural gift for piloting anything. She can fly anything in space. So, for the last 15 years, and here we have kind of a time skip where Svetlana has done this living kind of in the underworld. She's done honest flying with shipping companies, she's done dishonest pirating, and kind of everything in between. She kind of has this Mal Reynolds, I'm free if I'm in space kind of ethos now. And so, she receives a message with a photo that claims to be her son Leon, now a young man, who is an ace in the European Union's military. And the sender claims that they can reunite Svetlana with her son Leon. So that's kind of where we are. She is on the hunt to get her son back, knowing that he's been fully indoctrinated and knowing that he's an ace pilot for an enemy faction. So that's Svetlana's story. She has lots of augmentations. She kind of said, if I can get my son back, I'll do anything. And so she has a robotic arm that has a gun, a computer terminal, all in it so that she can plug up machines. She has a hacker background. She has ocular implants, so her eyes have been replaced, and she can see not only things like distances that increase her shooting. Her eyes, can chart trajectories so that she can make good shots with her guns, but her eyes can also, they can measure people's respiration, their heart rate, and things like that, and she can tell if people are lying. It's like she has polygraph machines programmed into her eyes. And I can't wait for all of those technological enhancements to be turned against me. I really love this character. I tried to say, if this character is going to have a flashback episode in a Gundam series, what is something that has high drama and explains all the things you've wondered about her from the beginning. So if she's in episode 1 and she has all these burns, then you find out in episode 15 where she got them.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then she meets Leon on the battlefield. What is she going to say to him? And these other two characters are going to be like, what? That's your son? Like, I can't wait for that moment. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited if we ever get there.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. And our last character is Derek. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I literally just submitted this just a little bit ago. So we haven't had like the back and forth between me and Benjamin and if I need to tweak anything. But as it is right now, I've had the idea for this character in my head since Benjamin sent out the questionnaire. Like Randy, I've got a type, and it's this outlaw mercenary type with a heart of gold.
Saying.
He's got a type. I've got a type. I like to skirt the law and kind of be not necessarily an anarchist, but definitely fight against corruption and use corruption to my advantage, I guess. I've seen some Gundam shows, and Gundam Wing's the one I remember, I guess, the best. And there was a ton of political thriller, like Benjamin's talked about, in that show. So I knew that my character, and so I had the name and kind of like the idea for my character from the get-go. I named my character Zachary, and then he just goes by Zach Morello. And I actually chose those two names because those are the two names of like the Rage Against the Machines people, is Zachary De La Roca and Tom Morello.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that as a little Easter egg to myself about just raging against the machine and just causing anarchy when I can. 30-year-old male. For me, I'm a very derivative type of person when it comes to these role-playing games. I find the things I like in other tropes and just kind of mash them together. So my character is the human is basically V from Cyberpunk, and his whole life is kind of like the way I've built it is like he's living in Night City, but then he comes across his mech, and I can get into that. But Zach was born on Mars in the. I put in my backstory that the AGE, the Earth government, have colonized the Olympus Mons, which is the largest volcano in the solar system. They came in, and there are 5 factions. So after some squabbling, they divided the volcano up into fifths, and they've all kind of like rested along the rim of the volcano, and built down the slope, and then in kind of like a slummy type way into the caldera of the volcano, there are like rings that go around into the I guess the caldera. I don't know what else to call it.
Sure.
And it's just like different rings, and it's like very slummy. So think of Night City in this way, where the top, and I've named the city Olympic City. It's like a megapolis. This kind of like real stark dichotomy between like the ultra rich and like the ultra poor. So this volcano is, it's massive, and then on top of that, they've built massive skyscrapers. So it's almost comically large, and I wanted to kind of
it's so cool. I imagine in my head that it's like the beginnings of what Coruscant might have looked like in Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe. I really wanted to, because I don't know if Benjamin mentioned it already, but one of the things is that the Earth governments are kind of based around like Greek gods and Greek mythology type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they colonized this city, I'm calling it Olympic City to kind of get back to Olympus, where they're just kind of,
I think that's so cool,
kind of reigning and ruling above everything. But my character lives within the volcano, and it's dark, it's smoky. The volcano, they've determined, has a low risk for eruptions, but there are rare minerals to be had, so this is like a really good place to mine and to accrue value and stuff like that.
Right.
So he works as kind of like in Cyberpunk they're called edge runners. I don't know if we have a name for that in this setting, but basically just someone who does odd jobs and gigs and favors.
Yeah, just like a mercenary.
Yeah, just kind of mercenary work. He just takes jobs usually for protection or for escorting, or I need to get something from the bottom up to the top, or top to the bottom, something like that.
Yeah, deliveries, retrievals.
Yeah, so he does that, and then I said that to work to like do gigs for the AGEs, they have a mandatory testing, and that's how Zach found out. It's kind of incentivized that the people who test positive get better gigs, they get more money, they kind of get the first choice of gigs and jobs, and then everything else kind of filters down into the bottom feeders. So it's incentivized to get tested, which is why he did. So he's got the X gene. It's a hard life, and you have to, like with Night City, you have to keep moving or you're going to get killed. And you can think of in Night City, there's all these different gangs on the streets. There are people who are actually crazy. They've modified their body so much that they've lost their humanity. Like things like that you have to deal with like on a daily basis down here in the caldera. And he has no love for these oligarchs living in Olympic City. And technically he is in the Olympic City, but he doesn't view it as that. They call themselves the Calderans within the volcano. It's just a hard life, and he has to keep moving to survive down there. Well, one day he was hired by the American AG. The character in my mind is just the default V on the cover of Cyberpunk. Like that's in my mind. That's who that is. If actor was playing this character, maybe like a kind of like a rugged cyberpunkish Edward Norton back in his prime.
Oh, okay, I like it.
Just someone who, looks rough, but he looks like he can take a beating and get back up, type of thing, or he can run. Either way. One day he's hired by the American AGE to go into the lower Calderan, or the lower caldera, where there's like all these tunnels and stuff for like mining and this and that, and it's kind of like a no man's land. A lot of unsanctioned AGE warfare will happen down here. A lot of pirates, and there are no rules. It's a no man's land, so you need to come prepared. You need to come strapped, or they're going to take your stuff, take your life, that kind of stuff. So he's hired to escort some people, and he kind of feels this calling. So with my mech, so if my human character is V, my mech is Big O from the show Big O, where it's this 30-meter tall mech, and which we've talked about is going to be the biggest ever, or just one of the biggest that's ever been created.
Yeah, like the biggest ever.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Big O. It's very it is also a mech, but it's very different from what you like see on a Gundam. Gundams are very flighty. They're very agile.
Oh yeah,
a lot of gun combat and beam swords. They're like robot samurai type stuff. But with Big O, he's a gigantic robot that just has fists that he punches with. He's got lasers.
I recently rewatched it, and we've talked about this, but Big O almost looks like a steam engine, like a train.
Yes.
Just with, obviously it's bulk, but the way it moves, they animate him to be so heavy.
Yeah.
And it's like every swing seems like it takes forever, and then just deals obscene damage and destruction to whatever it hits.
Yeah.
It's really fun to watch.
So I finished it, and I finished it a couple days ago, but I've needed some time to digest the ending, because I'm like, what did I watch? Because I didn't remember the ending very well, I guess.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that. But yeah, Big O, I absolutely love it. It's my favorite mech, I think maybe in existence. I think it's my favorite anime. I love it to death. I've always liked it. And I like the big guys, like with Pacific Rim, like the slow moving guys, like that just feels so much cooler. Not that Gundams aren't cool, but I just love the lumbering giant type thing. So Zack is down in these tunnels leading a group of maybe miners or scientists or whatever, and he just kind of feels this calling. And in Big O's kind of semi-sentient, so we kind of talked about maybe there's like an AI in this mech or something, and I didn't really know how to do it. This is just kind of me phoning it in with some sci-fi nonsense. He kind of feels like this calling, like something's calling out to him, and maybe that's through like cybernetic implants or whatever. So he's hearing some kind of signal, and he leads. He follows the signal, and it turns out to be like this secret facility where this group, and it can be whoever you want, Benjamin. I didn't really put a name on it to keep it open-ended for you. I don't know I don't want to make an enemy unless you want it to be somebody.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a facility where they're building this, like I said, this 30-meter tall mech. It's an absolute monster. It's still being like fitted in with like parts and all that stuff. It doesn't have all the weaponry, and that's just the kind of if something like this was built, it would be the biggest, best type of thing existed. But because I'm getting it early, so that way I can justify being level 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then just add in the weaponry and the defenses and all that stuff later on to like, oh yeah, now we have time and now we have the resources to equip this mech. So it's kind of like a bare bones kind of framework and chassis. And this facility is, guarded by some armed guards, and firefights break out, and his group is killed, and he flees to the mech and gets in, and he just kind of unleashes hell on these people. It's like a wrathful god waking up and slamming it down, and killing everyone in the facility, destroying the facility. Because I assume some kind of Earth government is building this in secret. I think that group has named the AI or the mech itself Deimos, which is like the Greek god for the god of fear, and also one of Mars's moons. So I like that. I feel like that's something that would be done, and we've talked about how it's supposed to be kind of like a harbinger of fear, of terror, as something the size of a skyscraper, walks up to you and punches you specifically in the face.
Yeah, just the shock value of having something that big.
Yeah, and people are trying to use their mechs to stop me, and I can just use one hand and just crush the cockpit, and toss them aside like they're toys. So yeah, the facility's destroyed. Everyone that my sensors or whatever can detect, I can leave that an open plot hole or plot hook for Benjamin. Has been killed. I hide the mech and I go back up to the my city, because I feel like I'm gonna have to like run now that I've got this. I've basically got the power of God now, and people will want it. I need to get out of here. So he goes back to his house to collect supplies, and he's also got a girlfriend named Diana, Roman name, which we've said that Mars, if Earth is Greek, then Mars people are, or Martians are Romans. So I named her Diana. And she's the Pan Am to my V.
Nice. I love that. Number one waifu.
Yeah, number one waifu, absolutely. So yeah, and that's kind of where I leave it. So that way, I didn't know how we were going to get from the ending of mine to yours. So I figured you'd send some kind of message, they'd pick the mech up, or I'd move the mech somewhere.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a chance to talk about that yet.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I'm really excited to see our three characters interact and bicker in combat, because the mech I made is designed to steal other mechs. I mentioned my character is a pilot savant. She wants to pop other people's cockpits open with her hacking cable, and then get them out and steal their mechs. And so to have someone who wants to kind of sneak and extract one target at a time, and to have them work with just a huge like the kind of weapon that just plays Hell's Bells on a loudspeaker.
Yeah. Flight of the Valkyrie.
Yeah, exactly. Your mech is designed to absolutely herald, fear and death are coming, while mine is designed to work in the shadows, and it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I love sci-fi. I love mechs. I love all that stuff. Don't let it took so long for me to get there to scare anyone off. I'm super into it. I've just been in a creative slump, and I've been super busy.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. And now that I have your thing, I need to go through it and see what plot hooks I can use, because we had already talked about the part where you found your mech and you were living in the caldera and doing all that, but I didn't know about Diana, and I didn't know, I need to kind of go through, and I do need to send you a message, although yours is going to be a little different. I'm not actually going to send you the message. You're just going to have some people show up at your door.
Sounds good.
But I'll send you a thing that says these people show up. What?
I said, here come the men in black.
Yeah, exactly.
Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones show up at your door.
Ooh, or maybe
I shoot first.
Yeah, you don't answer the door. You shotgun through the door.
Yeah, you crazy?
Yeah.
Answering the door, that's a death sentence.
It honestly
in
is.
Night City.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I forget who had asked me like what Mars was like, topographically and geographically and stuff. So at this point, there are domed areas that are really nice and luxurious. They feel basically like temperate Earth climates. There's not a whole lot of water. It still needs to be preserved and whatnot, but they're the right humidity and all of that. And this is where the farming tends to take place in here. So it's not the places directly like that are in the dome are kind of like countryside.
Yeah.
And there are people who live there, but they're like living on estates or the things, right? So it's not densely populated inside the domes, and only rich people who can afford like acreage live inside it, or farmers. And then there's the working class areas, you know, where you have the areas that are adjacent to these cities or to these areas that service the farms and also maybe serve the rich people. They'll live immediately adjacent to the dome. And there's a lot of pass through, right? Mars has been terraformed enough that it's not a death sentence to be outside of a dome. You can live out it, but it's like being in a like a cold desert. It's rocky. It's the air is thin. Maybe like up in a mountain. It kind of feels like that.
Cool.
Arid. And then there's these poor parts where he was talking about, especially near volcanoes and other heat systems, but just all throughout there's poor areas that are basically cities in the arid regions. Like it's like they're where the factories and the mining and the and
you will never find a more wretched hive of scum
exactly.
and villainy.
There's lots of places that are like Mos Eisley, where
moisture farmers.
Yep, moisture farmers and a lot of seediness and really no rich people in sight except for maybe gangsters and whatnot. But in this case, the gangsters have kind of the tacit support of the New Age because they kind of help keep the colonies in line. And that's kind of what happened to Randy's family, right? Is you had gangsters kind of ruining his life near a mining colony, and because the government supported it, because that's how you get cheap labor. And so and that's kind of what was happening with Derek's area, right? That this Olympus Mons is a very resource rich area that has been split up amongst the New Age, but in order for those powers to maintain access to those resources, they need to keep a lot of cheap labor nearby, and they have to, you know, prevent uprisings and such. So, right, they
keep the poor turned on themselves, so that way they don't think about attacking the upper class.
Exactly.
The old American playbook.
Well,
yep.
The whole the all of history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we didn't start it. We just perfected it.
So, anyways, that whole thing has been taken to the next level. So, I just wanted to kind of give you all that idea that there's like, it's not a semi-permeable membrane, but it's more like the domes are easy to get in and out of, but through like checkpoints. But it's kind of like driving through a at like Walmart loading
a walled city.
Well,
they're parts of walled cities,
basically. But there's like highways kind of in and out, but you have to slow way down because those flaps at like a Walmart loading dock where the truck backs up and then they like go through those loose it's kind of like that to keep the climates separate.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's obviously not big plastic flaps, but it's kind of you kind of go through. They let people in
like an airlock station.
But it's not like so important that the airlocks stay exactly, because if a little bit of moisture gets out, that helps the long-term terraforming. It's just a really slow process. You know, it's not going to escape Mars. So that kind of, and this will be important for future missions. But basically, it is possible to get in and out of these cities without, or these areas.
Punching a hole through a dome.
Right, exactly. And punching a hole through a dome isn't necessarily a death sentence although it will certainly mess up agriculture and a lot of rich people will be angry, but it's not like,
oh no.
Well, those are two different things. Messing up agriculture is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But the rich people angry. But it's basically just agriculture and rich people living in the dome. So,
which is the kind of place Svetlana grew up in. She grew up in one of these idyllic pastoral communities that had livestock and crops inside a dome.
Yeah.
And her parents were like botanists. So farmers, but of course with all the high technology that would be required to be a farmer on Mars.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so the other two grew up poor in these areas. They sound a little bit younger than Svetlana.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, all right, cool. I'm excited. So this is the world listener of Martian Colony that we're creating, and this is kind of our session 0 where everybody's been given the ability to create their backstories, and we've all shared them with one another. And I've created a world where, if you go back and listen to our last episode, this world is based on feedback from these players on what kind of game they want to see. And then I'm able to develop storylines based on the information they've given me about their characters' backstories. I can say, oh, well, this is what the world is like, because that's where they grew up, right? Now I know that space elevators can get attacked and still function, right? Like, the attack that kidnapped Travis's character's son didn't destroy the space elevator, because that would have been a huge deal, right? Like,
Yeah.
Not something that the European Union is going to risk their own space elevator just to kidnap a person. So now I'm like, okay, that provides some context, and I can use that going forward, stuff like that. So thank you all for sharing this.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, and I hope the listeners, if you're interested in Martian Colony, remember that you can access the rulebooks just by emailing us and requesting access. Email or send an email to mymythicalmeta@gmail.com. If you want access to any of our planning documents or our Discord where we will be playing Martian Colony, then look for our Patreon, patreon.com/mymythicalmeta. Thank you for listening, and thank you guys for being my great friends. Adios.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.